morning. My guest today is Sarah Cotterill, and I'm really excited because this is a topic that I don't know a lot about, but it is, and you can see from her background, we're just getting after it. We're going to talk CBD and we're going to talk women, and it's going to be amazing. So, Sarah, thank you so much for joining me this morning and having coffee and fitting me into your schedule, which I know we had a little adjusting, which always works for me. But so the high notes. So Sarah is, and let me give some background. I met Sarah briefly when I worked at Ice Miller for like un momento, like little tiny, it was in between jobs, worked there for a second, kept her in my group. So I met Sarah through Ice Miller. She was an attorney, and then she left and then became vice president general counsel for American Health Network. And now she's the CEO of Lineage Ag, which is kind of a big umbrella, and I want to get to all of that part. And you also operate Normandy Farm, which is the oldest farm in Marion County.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And they've been doing a really cool Friday market, and now they're switching it to a Saturday market, and it'll go all the way through winter, which I'm really excited about because you have different vendors, and sometimes it's good to jump around to different markets. I think that's really important. I got some coffee. So that's kind of a long line, but what would you say you do?
What do I do? It depends on the day, a little bit of everything. I feel like I'm everything from janitor to CEO, and CEO's a wide variety of things, but maybe it's helpful for me to tell a little bit about what Lineage Ag is and how we started it to get into what I actually do.
Let's do that.
I try to do. So we formed Lineage Ag on the basis of healing and creation of health, starting with the soil. And hemp is one of the things, as you can see from my background, that we do. But I was in healthcare, as you said, and went through, I would say, kind of my own dismantling process a couple of years ago, where life was crazy, and that's probably a whole different podcast that we could spend hours on. But I think part of what I really learned was to step back into my intuition, and that kind of to be still and know. And I spent a good portion of the year doing not really much of anything. Like I left my job, I took long walks along the Monon, I listened to all sorts of podcasts, I talked to people, and I love healthcare, and I love the idea of us being healthy. And I was trying to figure out, like, how do I have Western medicine meet Eastern medicine? How do we take those two things and put them together? How do we bring this intuition back into health? And over that period of time, it kind of hit me that so much of our health is determined by what we put into our bodies. And then learning that we can eat organic all day long, but organic food, if it's not grown in the right soil, doesn't really have any nutrients. It can still be a whole bunch of empty calories and empty carbohydrates. And that we've done so much to hurt our soil. So it led me back to this, oh my gosh, we can grow good food, good plant medicine in healthy soil, and it has all of these amazing benefits, right? Like we're healing the land, we're helping our farmers, we're helping our individual selves, and then when we're healthier, it ripples out from there. And so at the same time that I was going through my own like dark night, if you will, my own personal 2020 preview, hemp was legalizing in Indiana. And we saw from a bunch of the farmers, people coming in from Colorado and California saying, oh my gosh, you're going to make $1 million an acre. And you're just going to plant this stuff and it's going to be amazing. Well, hemp is an amazing plant all day long, but it's not so easy as to just plant it and go, in part because it hasn't been planted here in 80 to 100 years, right? Like it's not a normal commodity. You can't, the way you can plant corn, you've got an established genetic, you put it in, you harvest it with known methods, you go drop it off at the bin, and you get paid. None of that exists in the world of hemp. Right. So I have some awesome partners in this business, and we felt the need to kind of step in and say, oh my gosh, we can use hemp as an amazing tool in our toolbox to help farmers transition to a more regenerative way of growing and operating their farms.
Right.
And at the same time, get good plant-based medicine in the hands of people, help um, Indiana economy, help all these different segments came together with hemp. And so that's where we got our start. And so I am not a farmer by training. I mean, my mom
Right.
is a total green thumb. She has amazing gardens. My grandparents were farmers, but kind of had gotten away from it by the time I really got into it. So last year was a whole bunch of learning for me. I mean, I had a ton of hemp plants on the back of a trailer. I learned how to germinate plant. I mean, we did absolutely everything, and so much of it was trial and error. And so
Right.
really, like, what we've taken from the start of that is trying to build circular regenerative systems. So that's like my ultimate goal. How do we plug these different farmers in? How do we plug the different opportunities together? How do we plug the different people with their talent and expertise and interest to create systems that support this whole way of being?
Okay, so I love that you're getting back to the land and, the whole regenerative and helping local farmers. I mean, it's such a big circle. And we kind of hit on this, but I want to unpack a little bit more of how you got here. So yes, you had your preview of 2020 and, and you kind of unpack those things, but I think the line is really interesting from lawyer to healthcare to this a little bit more. And yes, it's healing people, but more of the, I'm more curious of what that looked like, not the why, but when you're like, oh, I'm gonna quit this and go into this and go into that. Specifically, what was that thought process at the end of your like, I'm quitting all the things I went to school for?
Mm-hmm. Well, I started out at Dyson Miller, as you said, doing healthcare, corporate, and regulatory
Right.
work. So I worked on the business side of healthcare with doctors and hospitals. I had a brief stint where I bought and sold hospitals that were small, up and coming hospitals, and then moved into American Health Network, which is a large group of physicians in Indiana and Ohio. We then sold that company to Optum, which is a
Okay.
subsidiary of United Health Group. United Health Group is a Fortune 6 company. I ran that whole integration process with help, but I mean, was a big part of that, integrating AHN into it over the course of a year, and just had this kind of feeling of it's not working, it's not me. And there's a lot of great things that organization does, well-meaning, impacting healthcare, but from a personal the personal ability to actually feel like you were making change and not just knocking your head against the wall um, was frustrating to me. And I don't even think that I fully realized it.
Yeah.
And I had some other things that happened in my personal life at the same time. Frankly, a relationship that went really bad and put me in a situation that I never, ever thought that I would be in. And I had someone that got physical with me. I don't talk about it a bunch, but I think it needs to be talked about because, I left that night going, I used to like help women that this happened to, and this is now me. Something in life, like in general, has to change. And I think I had just gotten so far away from, like I said, listening to that gut feeling that when I did go, oh my gosh, like I have to figure out who I want to be, how I want to be. That it was all those forces together to just kind of culminated. I think the universe shook me out of where I was, that like there are better things. And so I kind of learned to have this, yes, thank you attitude, because you can be a victim of it, or you can go, yeah, I learned from that and it was terrible. I never want to go back there, but let's figure it out. And so now I kind of live my life with this motto of don't do anything that feels heavy.
I love that.
Which is pretty simple. But again, you stop and go, does that feel heavy? And if it does, you don't do it. It doesn't mean you don't work hard. It doesn't mean I don't put in the hours. It doesn't mean I don't get frustrated and all of that.
Right.
But that is my, like, how I evaluate decisions.
Right.
And I was doing a little bit of legal consulting work for a company that was in Denver traveling, all this stuff. And like I said, listening and just
Mm-hmm.
figuring out what my next step was. And I remember calling my mom one day on the phone and saying, you know what, if I could figure out anything that I wanted to be, I want to be a
Mm-hmm.
farmer. Like, I feel like farmers are the future of this company. Every successful revolution begins
Mm-hmm.
with the farmers and with the soil, and all these things, health and climate degradation, all come back to this soil and how we're growing things. And there's the real ability to make an impact. And I tell you, it wasn't more than like a week later that I met one of my business partners who had previously been in farming, knew more about the hemp side of things than I did. And it was like we met and we were like, oh, okay, this is this is what we're gonna do. And then was talking to another friend of mine who's in the food business and has done some in ag, but
Mm-hmm.
really understands the production side on a really large scale, the ingredient side, among other things. And it just all gelled,
Yeah.
kind of took from there. And so I feel like some of it is my idealism and naivete that got me here so far, but it's worked, and it seems to be like kind of putting that goal out there and then
Yeah.
not being super specific, or allowing it to come the way it's going to come.
Right.
And be,
It's so good. I just really love that it's, it, if it does it feel heavy. One thing I would love for you to unpack a little bit more about Lineage Ag. So, because you've talked about the soil, and then if you've alluded to hemp, and then farming, and ingredients, all that sort of thing, which obviously comes on this. But can you unpack, because I don't think we've said it, that you're also doing, a line of CBD,
yes.
also helping the farmers grow. So kind of unpack that a little bit of, what is Lineage Ag? What does it mean? Like, what does it incorporate?
Sure. So I think one of the things that we learned early on, or kind of identified early on for us, was that it was important to be vertically integrated on a bunch of different fronts. And part of that goes back to what I was saying about hemp being, a nascent industry and not a
Yeah.
commodity. So you can grow it all day long and you can grow the most amazing stuff, but if you don't have a place to put it, a product to put it into,
Right.
then there's no true value to it. So not only did we want to help the soil, help the farmer grow good stuff, but then we put it into a line of CBD products that's continuing to expand called Lineage Hemp. It's something that we sell in, local stores, we sell online, and that's a whole learning lesson to me, not being on the sales side of life, but it's continuing to go, and we've got some really exciting things in the pipeline.
Yeah.
Um, that I would say is on a little bit of the larger ag side of life. And then the other part of building that system is saying, okay, you don't want to create hemp in a monocrop situation the way we've
Mm-hmm.
created corn and soybeans. So how can we help farmers use hemp one year on a field, and then maybe it's oats the next year, and
Right.
maybe some sort of corn that we're going to use the next year, and maybe it's sunflowers the year after that. So we help them to take at least parts of their farm, transition them to a more organic, more regenerative way of growing, but help it year after year after year. So
Right.
not just saying put hemp in here and that's all we have for you to do. And
Cool.
then also help with the markets for those various specialty crops.
Okay. Now, we part of your journey already hit my regular question of struggles, but what I find kind of funny is, so obviously hemp smells like pot.
Mm-hmm.
It smells the same. It looks the same. I mean, it looks like pot. So I am kind of setting this up a little bit, but I want to know, this is the first time I've ever asked specifically on this, but, have you had struggles with people thinking you're just growing weed? Or have you had struggles with the state? I mean, how has that been?
Mm-hmm. So in Indiana, on the state side, we're under a research license. So the state generally keeps really close tabs on where you're growing and testing, and they know all those different pieces. We did a lot of education last year of like the forensic crime lab and the police officers
Cool.
and things like that, just to help people understand what it is. You mentioned at the top of this Normandy Farms. And so we operate that property that's over on 79th and Marsh Road. we have this year turned it into an agri-hood. It is surrounded on a couple sides by neighborhood, and so we have a little farm in the middle of neighborhoods, and we have organic produce there, and we continue to build that farm. But last year we grew hemp on that property, um, for a couple different reasons, because we have our corporate office farm office right there, so it's awesome to be able to do research and development. um, it um, it also hemp helps clean up the soil, so it pulls out any kind of gross stuff that's in there. It's got long roots that start to aerate the soil, and
Mm-hmm.
even after a year of growing hemp, you can start to see that dirt change to soil. But that's a place where we had a lot of hemp, and we at the end of the season had some issues, some challenges with people coming in and stealing it, and kind of more people than I would like that descended on it.
Yeah.
It was also a challenge to educate the neighborhood, and I think there's still some education to be done just in the general population of what hemp is versus what marijuana is. Um, but hemp can smell like weed, like you're saying, and
Yeah.
so the neighbors didn't like that. We listened to them. We never want to put anybody in
Right.
danger, right? And so it was the right thing to transition hemp from growing in more of an urban setting to just keeping it in all of our rural settings. But I mean, it was as simple as some guy got a flat tire right by the farm and looked over and said, "That's marijuana growing," put it out on Facebook that it was marijuana. Thank you, social media. And not a day later, it was people coming in at night and trying to cut it and run off with it. I mean, just the likes of which you would never
Oh my gosh.
imagine. And some of it, I think they tried to sell into some of these smoke shops. I'm not sure if it went to like pad the marijuana that was other. I don't even know. Like, that's a world that I am
I
somewhat
know.
happily oblivious to. But I just know that it wasn't a good situation for
Yeah.
us, our crops, the neighborhood. So we have really moved it out to the rural areas
Yeah.
this year, and there it does okay. Like last year we had some guy that was riding his bike. We caught it on the cameras because all that stuff is monitored.
Yeah.
It's a high enough value crop that it's worth knowing, and the police watched it and stuff like that. But then he'd cut it down and he'd bike away. I mean, it was wild to watch.
Just like you
So
just went to the farmer's market, just throw it over your shoulder. That is so, I mean, it's not funny, but it's kind
but,
of
and
funny.
I don't know if people knew what they were getting. I mean, you could smoke an entire bale of hemp, a big giant bale, and not feel
Right.
anything, or at least the THC
Yeah.
high.
Oh,
So people, second year is better in Indiana. I think it'll continue
good.
to improve as we.
Well, I definitely don't mean to laugh, but that's kind of funny.
No, it is funny.
Totally funny. So with all that, where have you found some of that joy? I mean, 2020 is a dumpster fire. But where has been some of that joy for you?
I think I get excited every day when I get up. Like, we just have awesome possibility in the stuff we're doing. Um, and I think it's the same thing. Like, you can look at the health of this country. You could look at your individual health. You could
Right.
look at the climate degradation, and you could go, "Oh my God, we have 60 harvests left," or "The ocean's going to be totally acidified in 8 years," and all this stuff. But when I get to talk to our farmers, both internally and externally every day, I mean, the faith and the mettle of that group of individuals and their observations on the ground and the soil. And so when you actually get outside and
Yeah.
reconnect with nature and put your hands in the dirt and see the birds and listen, like, it is this kind of sense of
Yeah.
calming, I think. And I see so much possibility in, we can start to make the changes. And I can't change the pandemic and I can't change all of this stuff, but I can help this small plot of land, and I can help you put something good in your body, whether that's on the hemp CBD side or whether that's on the organic fruits and vegetables side. And we can start creating it. And I just am a believer that if we start here and we start small and kind of that Zorro circle, right? You're like your
Mhm.
little circle of influence, that it'll continue to grow. And so I think that's where I find my everyday hope and joy in
I
it
love
all.
that. Oh, Sarah, it's so good. So, so last two questions, as we kind of wind down this, and these are always my favorite ones. Tell us your needs. Like, what can we do? What can the community do for you? I mean, is that learning more about CBD? Is that amplifying lineage hemp? I mean, what can we do for Sarah Cotterill?
Sure. I mean, I would love everybody to go out and try the CBD and try Lineage Hemp and give us your feedback. In part because we then support the regenerative efforts of our farmers with those dollars. And so I think it is as much about telling the story. Like, we don't want to be a company that has 1% for the planet. We really want to create this soil, air, water as a top line instead of, a percentage of the bottom
Right.
line. And so supporting Lineage Hemp and the CBD efforts does that. The holidays are a great time, right? It's a stressful time. And it's a good product. Like, it's not a panacea. CBD is not going to solve all of your issues, but it can be really helpful in a number of ways. And we've got tinctures and we've got some pain cream that's awesome too. We've got our farmers market, lineagemarket.com. And so that's coming out and, getting to know your farmers. There's meat, there's dairy, there's vegetables there. And whether it's our market or the Broad Ripple market or the Garfield market, wherever, like, the more you can get out and know where your food comes and support the building of that system,
Yeah.
and start saying, as a consumer, I'm voting with my dollars. And it is important to me that I have good, nutrient dense food that I can feed myself and my kids. Then that helps create this whole thing. And there are other things that people are interested in. School and kids health, and there's a movement called non-toxic neighborhoods.
Okay.
I keep thinking I'm going to have the time to like really create a local chapter here and do it, but basically it's to, like, we as a community could get Indianapolis to say no more glyphosate, which is no more Roundup. And Roundup is a
Oh,
water soluble toxin. It's in 70% of the air we breathe, 70% of the water we drink. You spray it on the weeds in your garden. Farmers also spray it on their crops. And when you get into the Roundup, the glyphosate world, you start to see the connection to all these neurological diseases, the rise in autism and gut health. Because what happens is that um, when glyphosate gets into our body, it breaks apart those tight junctions of your gut
oh,
lining, and your gut needs to be zippered together. And basically it has like a wireless communication network and a wired communication network. And when the lining gets pulled apart, then the wired communication network doesn't work. So you can't talk cell to cell. And when that communication network in your body doesn't work, you could be eating organic kale all day long, but it's still a problem because it's pulling apart and making you have a leaky sieve. And if you think about it, like, you take cancer as an example,
mhm.
if you get a cell that's out in the middle of nowhere, it's kind of like your cell phone. If it's too far from the tower, the cell itself works, the cell phone works, but it can't communicate back and forth. So that cell then goes, I'm damaged. If it can talk to somebody, to another cell, it goes, oh yeah, you're good. I'm damaged, but you're here. I'll kill myself off like I'm supposed to. If it can't talk, then what happens is it goes, oh, I'm going to proliferate. I'm going to make more and more and more. So there are all these little things. So non-toxic neighborhoods, or kind of just keeping your own, at least,
Right.
surroundings away from chemicals, knowing your farmer. I would tell everybody to go plant something. Whether you go to your local florist and get a plant, whether you stick a little bit of mint on your windowsill,
Mhm.
like, it's good for you in the winter. Just to have that there. And I think people get so worked up over, like, gardens have to be beautiful, and go throw it all on the ground. It'll fine. Figure it out. Have fun with
Yeah.
it.
Oh, I love that. It's so good. And I mean, us, that was our pandemic project, is we just need to grow more, and we grew an obnoxious amount of food, which we're going to enjoy all through winter, which is really great.
Right.
Okay, last question, always the biggie.
Uh-oh.
Dun, dun, dun. How do you want to leave your mark? How do you want to leave your trace? How do you want people to know Sarah was here?
Oh, gosh. You know, I just, I want to help I want to help, right? Like I want to create this real healing in the creation of health. And like I told you earlier, I guess I don't know exactly how that's going to come. I think
Right.
that every day showing up, trying to find that joy in the little things, um, trying to help our farmers, trying to help people eat better food, and then just see where it goes. And I guess I don't worry too much about leaving a trace because I think the goodness will happen, and it will
Yeah.
as it should, and it already is. And I really don't care if it's attributed to me, as long as it's happening, as long as, my people and my kids and their kids get to benefit from it.
Oh, that's so good. I love that. And I actually love because that's how very much I am. I don't care if it's attributed to me. Like, is the world better? It
Mm,
doesn't, it doesn't have to be because of one, it's the collective.
yeah.
And I truly think you are part of that collective. And I think it's so good. And I'm so grateful for your time. And thank you so much for having coffee because that was a lot of information. And I think people are really, it's so good because they're thinking, I didn't know about all that stuff. And I think it's good. And I think maybe at some point, maybe we talk again in another format that's more, let's talk about CBD and what that means and all of that. And I think that people would find that wildly fascinating because I selfishly would.
Yeah. Well,
So
and I appreciate you and the platform and the time. And if there are people that are like so interested and want to get involved or want to
yeah.
learn more about any of the aspects, like I could talk about this stuff all day long. I love it so much. So I am more than happy to connect with people.
Oh, thank you. You heard that. She said that. Thank you everyone for watching. And Sarah, thank you so much for taking the time. And again, I'm just really grateful for what you do and for your friendship. Thank you so much.
Thank you.